Secret underground tunnels, mysterious skyscrapers, modern tourist attractions with surprisingly dark pasts. These are some of the most disturbing secrets of famous cities hidden in plain sight. When you think of Las Vegas, you probably picture a lot. Neon lights, casinos, over-the-top live performances. It's all very big and overwhelming to the senses, but there's a side of Vegas that most people never see. Hidden beneath all that glitz and glamour is a network of underground tunnels. They were originally built to help control flash floods, but they become home to a secret community living right under the city's streets. The tunnels stretch for miles beneath the strip. They're the complete reverse of the nightlife and all the bright lights above. Life down there is not easy. It's dark, damp, and when it rains, the tunnels can quickly fill with water. People have died down there getting swept up in the rushing water. But for the people living there, often referred to as the tunnel people, it's a place to find some shelter and even a sense of community away from the harsh realities of life on the street. Some of these folks have fallen on hard times, others are escaping bad situations, and a surprising amount of people have just lost their IDs and have found it next to impossible to replace them, meaning they can't get any work, which sounds insane, but apparently that's true. There's a really good Vice documentary on the tunnel people, worth checking out. After this video, of course. Chicago's Englewood post office doesn't really evoke a whole lot of dread, unless you just quiver at the thought of having to stand in line, but this incredibly average-looking building was built over part of the land that Dr. Henry Howard Holmes' infamous castle death trap was built on. Holmes was one of America's first serial killers, and to this day, and this is gonna sound messed up to say, but probably the most creative. You see, in 1887, he began constructing a building specifically designed to help him kill. It was a 3-story maze of windowless rooms, secret passageways, trap doors, and soundproof chambers, all so that he could lure his victims to their deaths. Holmes was eventually caught and confessed to 27 killings, though it's believed the actual number is probably much higher. And now, standing right on the land where this awful mansion used to be, is a post office that people pass by every day, probably having no idea they're walking over what was once a very real house of horrors. There are even rumors that some of the original basement structures may still be buried beneath the post office. In the middle of the busy streets of New York City, there's a building that stands out, and not because it's flashy or particularly beautiful. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's also very mysterious. This is the AT&T Long Lines building, a windowless skyscraper that's been the subject of a good number of rumors and theories over the years. It started construction in 1969, it was completed in 74. It was originally designed to house equipment for long-distance phone calls, but it didn't take long for people to start wondering exactly what was going on in there. I mean, who builds a skyscraper with no windows? The building is 550 feet of solid concrete built to withstand a nuclear blast, but why? Is there some sort of top secret government activity going on in there, like NSA operations for surveillance and data collection? A lot of people say so. Sticking with New York, Bedloe Island, now known as Liberty Island, is the home of one of the most iconic sites in the world, the Statue of Liberty. But before this massive tourist attraction was built, the island had a much darker past. Back in the day, the island was used as a quarantine station for people with smallpox and other contagious, deadly diseases. In the 18th and 19th century, smallpox was a big problem. Not only was it very contagious, but it was often deadly, and with thousands of immigrants arriving in New York every year, the authorities needed a way to keep outbreaks somewhat under control. Bedloe's Island was the perfect spot. Isolated enough to contain the disease, but close enough to the city to be practical. Ships coming into New York Harbor would sometimes be stopped, and passengers with symptoms were sent to Bedloe's Island to keep the sickness from spreading. People were essentially stranded there, away from the city and everyone else, until they either got better or didn't. Obviously, this would have been a pretty grim place to be, which is kinda wild when you think about what it represents now. Estadio Nacional in Santiago, Chile is famous for major sports events and concerts bringing in massive crowds year-round. Some of the biggest bands in the world have played here. But there's a side to this stadium that many people might not know about. The military overthrew the government in a coup led by General Augusto Pinochet. What followed was this brutal period where thousands of people were arrested, tormented, or made to disappear altogether. And Estadio Nacional became one of the military's main detention centers. For months, the stadium was filled with people who were rounded up because they were suspected of opposing this new regime. And now, instead of fans and athletes, the stands and locker rooms held prisoners. And for many families, the stadium became a symbol of fear and uncertainty as they just waited for news about their loved ones. It would be hard to imagine what it was like if you saw the stadium today, but for some Chileans, the stadium is just a reminder of a very dark chapter in the country's history. Kensington Palace Gardens in London is one of the city's most posh neighborhoods. It's one of London's most expensive streets, home to embassies, billionaires, even royals. Looking at it, you'd never imagine anything dark and disturbing going on, other than maybe weird eyes wide shut parties, but while that's definitely possible, it's the dark history of the neighborhood I'm talking about today. During World War II, and for some years afterward, one of the grand houses on this street was the location of the London Cage, a top secret facility used by British intelligence. Officially known as an interrogation center, the London Cage was where captured German soldiers and suspected war criminals were taken for questioning. Behind this elegant London mansion were intense interrogations using psychological and physical torment. Some even say they got medieval on these prisoners, which, hey, for the ones that were guilty anyway, I honestly don't care. The only good Third Reich member is a dead Third Reich member. Today, the house that once held the London Cage is just another luxury property in a very elegant, picturesque neighborhood. Sunshine 60 in Tokyo is known for a lot of things. For one, it's a massive 60-story skyscraper that until 1985 was the tallest building in Asia. It's a mixed-use building, so there's shops, a healthcare center, office space. It's such a modern construction that you'd probably never think it was haunted, but many say it is. Before the skyscraper was built, the site was home to Sugamo Prison, where some of the most notorious war criminals from World War II were held and executed. The prison was demolished to make way for Sunshine 60, but many believe that the spirits of those who died never left. Over the years, there have been tons of reports about strange occurrences in the building, everything from unexplained cold spots to eerie footsteps echoing through empty hallways at night. Plus, it's Japan, they just do ghosts well. Some people claim to have seen ghostly figures in the building on certain floors. Others talk about odd mechanical failures that happen without any clear explanation. Even the construction workers who built Sunshine 60 reported feeling uneasy at times, with some just refusing to work at night because of all the unsettling things that would go on. The Hollywood Wax Museum in Los Angeles might seem like just another tourist attraction where you can snap selfies with lifelike figures of your favorite celebrities. As eerie as wax museums are already, there's said to be something more going on with this one. The museum is said to be haunted, with rumors of spirits moving among the wax figures, making it one of the creepiest places in LA. Visitors have reported strange things happening, especially when they take pictures at night. Sometimes odd images or colors show up in the photos, like someone or something was there with them. The Last Supper exhibit is particularly notorious, apparently. People claim to have seen the spirit of a woman quietly praying by the bench, who vanishes when you get closer. I guess that's how you find out she was a ghost. Then there's the ghost of a young man who is apparently obsessed with the museum's Chamber of Horrors. According to legend, he loved it so much that he decided to stick around after his death. Then there's the story of the journalist. A man from National Enquirer once locked himself inside the museum overnight just to see if there was any truth to these ghost stories. When the staff let him out the next morning, he was visibly shaken, deathly pale, and refused to talk about what happened. Whatever he saw or experienced that night is a mystery to this day. Beijing took the threat of nuclear war very seriously, so seriously that they built a massive underground bomb shelter, sometimes called the Underground Great Wall. It's an enormous complex that was constructed between 1969 and 79. The underground city was designed to be a fully functional shelter, capable of housing up to 300,000 people in case of a nuclear attack. It's a hidden city beneath the city, including everything you'd need to survive. There are hospitals, schools, theaters, shops. The complex had its own water supply, ventilation systems, and places for growing food. At one time, there were about 90 access points to this place as well, cleverly hidden in plain sight. You'd find them in shops along the main streets of Beijing, for example. Today, though, only a few of these entrances are still around. We gotta mention the Paris Catacombs. This underground ossuary houses the remains of over 6 million people. You might have heard of them in passing, but most people don't really realize just how eerie and extensive these catacombs are. They were originally created in the late 18th century because cemeteries were overflowing. The bones were transferred from various graveyards and stacked along miles of tunnels beneath the city. The tunnels stretch for about 200 miles, but only a small portion is actually open to the public. Surprisingly orderly fashion, which is definitely eerie, but kind of beautiful at the same time. Morbidly beautiful. I mean, when you think about what you're really looking at, which are millions of human remains, it's hard not to get creeped out. What's really disturbing, though, is the fact that there are rumors of secret entrances, hidden chambers, and even underground parties held by people who know how to navigate the more secret parts of the labyrinth. Some urban explorers have ventured deep into the catacombs only to get lost and never be found again, or they've discovered some unsettling things that never make it into the tourist brochures. Have you ever been to any of these places? Let us know down in the comments. And with all that said, I've been your host, James, and I'll catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next video.